Welcome back to the Wizard Shop, and today we're going to talk about how to keep these older cars on the road and parts are drying up. You're actually having to modify or custom build or make your own just to keep these cars on the road now. Let's get started. So I have several cars in the shop today. I'm going to go to each one and show you some things I've had to modify or parts to be custom made and solutions found to where I've been to the parts house, multiple different parts places, and basically get laughed at and or get told, those parts are gone, bro. There are no more. Well, what are we going to do? So we're going to have to get kind of creative and figure out solutions as we go along. Now that makes sense. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, if somebody tried to keep a 1910 Oldsmobile on the road, yeah, you're going to have to get creative with that. That makes sense. But we're having to do this now with cars that are only 30 or 40 years old, not 100 years old. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. You guys can let us know in the comments what you think is going on here. But today we're going to start with my 2006 VW Touareg, whatever it's called, that I got from Hoovie. This thing's only 20 years old, but I'm really not having problems with finding parts because of age, but it's because the engine that's under this hood, the V10 twin turbo TDI, is so weird and so rare. They only made a certain number for just a handful of years, and then they stopped. And they stopped. It wasn't like they stopped a year or two ago. They stopped decades ago, like a decade and a half. I want to show you some things we had to get creative with on this because there were no parts. So this thing is most of the way back together. I've been having Danielson work on this. Let me move this little package out of the way. But it had valve cover gaskets that were leaking really bad. And the way VW wants you to buy those is the entire valve cover just to replace the gaskets. You can't buy just the gasket. Well, at least not for this particular engine. They want you to buy the whole valve cover for $700 or $800 each, not for a pair. It would be almost $1,600 for two valve covers. That's it. There is a solution. I actually contacted my friend Mirko in Germany. He believed that the VW Transporter that had T5, like a 5-cylinder version of this engine, that the gaskets would work. And he sent them to me all the way from Germany. And you can see that you have to break it. They're molded in a machine and with liquid rubber or whatever this is to the edge of the valve cover with the machine, and is not meant to come back off. The only way you get it off is breaking it. But the VW Transporter has the same valve cover, but they didn't mold it on. They just have normal, like a slit down the middle on the back side that you slide over and put on the bolts. It works great. So luckily, Mirko in Germany came to the rescue with VW Transporter valve cover gaskets. And as hard as it was to find those, it only escalated from there. While we had all this apart, Danielson said, why don't I go ahead and pull the intakes off, clean all the soot, and clean this off for you. He started pulling things apart, and because it's VW and it's old and lots of miles on it, you guys know the magic term I use, achy breaky plastics. You so much as touch them and they crumble. There's really nothing you can do about it. Some of the effort it takes to get some of these pieces apart is enough to crumble them. And we ran into that. Let me show you what we did in the middle of the valley here. This metal piece is supposed to be solid metal all the way down to here. But when Danielson removed the bolts, he didn't even put any pressure on it. Just the release of the bolts cracked it in half. So I had to take these little elbow pieces off, machined in to make a barb fitting, and thread the hole here and make my own barb fitting that threads in, and a little hose solves it. This will never cause any issue. But the reason why I had to do this, I went to the VW dealer, Whirlpack, Pelican Parts, O'Reilly's, all your favorite parts stores, AutoZone. They all laughed. Finally, I found a guy that says, those are you're not going to find, Car Wizard. He said, you're not. He said, but I know of a place that you can, and it's in Latvia. We've had to get parts from Latvia for Hoovie's old Maybach 62. You guys remember the one that had the Wolverine slash in it? There were no parts. There just weren't any. We had to get used ones all the way from Latvia, which is the same situation with this engine. Not the whole car, or SUV I should say, but just the engine. We found them. 12 to 24 weeks to get them. No shops, you can't do that and run a shop. So I told Danielson, well, I'll fix it. I'll make it where it can come off again without cracking and breaking. The little hose situation I made will be perfectly safe. It solved it, but I really didn't want to have to do that. All that moves through there is coolant. It's just a tiny little hole that moves coolant from the cylinder head into this little T right here. It's under like 14, 16 psi. It's hardly any heavy pressure or anything on it, so it'll be just fine. So he's continuing on, he's trying to remove things, and then these little elbows here ended up getting these little guys broken. They go right here into a rubber grommet, and then it connects to this guy, this little PCV valve, and that connects there. As you can see, it's broken the nipple right off. Danielson tried to be very careful on one of these. They were so difficult to remove because the rubber had turned to basically plasticized hard plastic, and it cracked it. He said, Wizard, I feel confident if you would try to remove the other side. Maybe there's a solution here. I tried to remove it as well. It crumbled into pieces. This is unobtainium. Maybe you guys can let us know in a link down below that you know where you can get these, and please don't send us a link to something that's not going to work. Make sure it is this part. It's like a 135-degree elbow. I have a solution. I've ordered some grommets that will fit into the valve covers and a 135-degree silicone hose, and it will do the same thing. It'll be just fine. But why can't I buy these? Why are they nowhere to be found? Again, I contacted multiple parts suppliers. Same scenario. You're not going to find those, Wizard. At that point, I told Danielson, let's clean the EGR valves and clean some things as best as we can. Let's stop taking the top of this engine apart, because all the little achy breaky plastic pieces, if they get cracked, it's obvious there are no parts for this engine as far as all these little weird PCV elbows and things. I don't know how long I'm going to hold on to this thing. We're going to fix the problems that it has. I knew it would be difficult to work on, but I didn't know that the parts are just gone. So that's kind of a real bummer for me on this vehicle. Let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to move on to older cars. This is Hoovie's Chrysler Imperial Frank Sinatra edition. It's common on an older car to have failures of fuel system parts because they're just old, they're sitting in fuel and they break. But the situation here is back a long time ago before Hoovie bought this. They converted it from fuel injection to kind of a half EFI, half carburetor type weird setup, which we have now converted to fully carbureted setup. But one issue he had was the fuel gauge was reading wrong. It wouldn't even be accurate. Sometimes it would read nothing. It was really bad. He's like, what can we do about this, Wizard? What I found out is somebody has replaced this fuel tank in the past, and it came with a fuel sending unit that's for an analog gauge, which has the physical needle that moves back and forth from F to E. This car, and also another car I'm going to show you, it's weird they both showed up basically at the same time, have digital gauges. I ordered a different sending unit for this one, same thing. I ordered from another company, same thing. They keep sending analog fuel sending units. So I contacted a few of my suppliers. I said, do you have anything in your parts lookup for specifically the digital version? They have a different ohms reading. And one guy actually laughed. He goes, man, there's probably only a handful of those that they made. Those are years ago. That's gone. I even checked for a used one on eBay. Nothing. This is the one that was in it when Hoovie bought it, it is an analog fuel sending unit. It reads from 0 ohms to 90 ohms. And that basically speaks the wrong language for this car. It understands 33 ohms to 240 ohms. That's what it's happy with on this digital gauge. So what I had to do, and we'll go over to the Lincoln Town Car and show you the solution I found for both of these cars at the same time. And it took me 5 solid hours of brainstorming, trying to figure out what is the correct ohms, what am I looking for, where can I go to get the right sending unit, how can I modify it to make it work. And I can't bill for those 5 hours. I lost them, which is fine. I'd like to find a solution for these guys, but it's kind of a pain. Luckily, both of these cars are really good friends of mine. The one I just showed you is Hoovie's. This is Eurasian Bob's 1988 Lincoln Town Car, and it's in excellent shape. We might do a video on it later, but I wanted to show you some of the trouble we went to here. So he purchased this car, didn't really have any serious issues. He went to fill up with gas, and it just like a waterfall of gas all over the ground. He stopped, he's like, I got to get this up to the wizards. I don't know what's going on here. I really don't want to catch this really nice Lincoln on fire. Someone in the past had replaced the fuel tank, and when they did, the fuel filler neck right here, they used the old grommet from the old tank. Look at that, guys. No wonder it was leaking when he filled up. Why would you put this old crusty grommet on a brand new tank? So the tank obviously didn't come with a new grommet, or they would have used it. Luckily, I was able to find another grommet. But he's having the same issue as Hoovie's Chrysler, that the fuel gauge is all out of whack. And guess what? It has digital gauges too. So I have 2 cars in the shop, completely different years, completely different makes and models, not even the same parent companies, with the same exact problem. Both cars have digital gauges, and on both cars somebody in the past put analog fuel sending units on them and screwed it up. I went to go order new sending units for this one, and again I keep getting analog ones. So I called them and said, can you please send me the digital version? And this is what I got from the parts guy. That's it, silence. It completely blew this guy away. I was like, hello, the digital one. More silence. Finally I said, you know what, I'm done with you people. I will find a solution myself. So I did. Here's a picture, what I ordered. It's on Amazon. It's a kit that comes with a digital gauge sending unit and its own little digital gauge. I won't need the digital gauge, and I did rob and cannibalize it for the little piece that I need. So this is the Lincoln sending unit as far as this tubing and this plate. And this was the original analog sending unit that was meant for this car. Here's what we're going to do with the analog version of it.
Hey!
No, I didn't throw it at Mrs. Wizard. I threw it by her. That's going in the trash. It's getting yeeted because this is not an analog. They keep stuffing me with analog sending units. I don't want those. I want digital. This is a digital sending unit. And guess what it measures? 33 ohms empty, 240 full. So I drilled the old plate and put my own screws on it to mount the digital sending unit to this analog, which stock setup here. So this is still the OEM piece, but this part is not. And I did have to weld this on so it doesn't slide off. But you see it works. I took this sending unit, this modified one, on both cars and temporarily wired them in and manually moved it with my hand. And guess what? Both gauges now work perfectly. Why is that so hard? Anyways, it's the solution. It had to be modified. You had to do some brainstorming and put some pieces together and figure it out. Now I know going forward, if I have this problem in the future, to not even search to the parts suppliers for the correct fuel sending unit. They don't exist. This will solve the issue that Eurasian Bob had with his fuel gauge. We've got a new grommet in it, so his fuel leaks are solved. Thank heavens. I've ordered a second one of these that I'll also cannibalize and modify it to fit Hoovie's Chrysler sending unit. Both cars will be fixed. Happy day. And thinking of fuel problems, another modification I've done is on the Ferrari 550s and 575s. It's common for them to have the fuel pump itself surrounded by a rubber isolator. With today's ethanol gas, which they didn't have back then, it just literally melts it and destroys the fuel pump. I have the solution. I've done it on multiple 550s already. I use Kia Rondo fuel pumps. It's the same Bosch fuel pump as a 550 or 575, same output, same everything. I take just the pump and I modify the actual housing, the fuel pump housing, and it fits in, bolts right in, no more troubles. I don't use the rubber isolator because it's going to melt. I've done several already and all of them said, Car Wizard, it's running great. I've had no troubles. And it'll never happen again. So we're having to modify now to keep these old cars on the road. But wait, there's more. Look at my shaft, Mrs. Wizard.
Ooh, it's kind of wiggly there, dear.
It is a little floppy.
Yeah.
This is my 91 300ZX that I just bought from Eurasian Bob. I noticed it had a slight vibration in the drive shaft.
You noticed it had a slight vibration?
Actually, Mrs. Wizard did.
Thank you.
And she diagnosed it correctly. The carrier bearing here is bad. You can see it's sunken down. See how it's oblonged? It should be centered. So I was just going to replace that and put it back in. But then I realized these U-joints, they're tight and they're like when I try to move them, it's like I can feel the needles inside. They're kind of worn out. But this is just like the Hondas I've mentioned in the past to you guys. Let me show you the U-joint. They're staked in. You see all the little lines? It looks like a clock. There's no ring, there's no snap ring, there's no circlip. They press it in at the factory and these are non-serviceable. So you cannot put new U-joints on your drive shaft. You have to buy the whole drive shaft. I thought I'd be smart and go through a supplier. I'm not going to mention any names because I don't need any lawsuits. I purchased a one-piece aluminum drive shaft thinking this will be the solution to all my problems. I won't have to worry about this carrier bearing anymore. And here's a picture of how it turned out. Actually, two pictures. It's too short. It didn't even have the right flange at the end. So I contacted them. What happened here? On the box it actually said 300ZX 2-seater, not the 2+2, 2+0, manual transmission, naturally aspirated. So I made all the right selections exactly to what this car is. I don't know what that drive shaft was that they sent me. It doesn't go to this car. I got so upset I just sent it back. I said, keep it, give me a refund. And on eBay I found a brand new complete OEM drive shaft. Just like this one. It's all brand new. New joints, new carrier, everything. For the same price. It'll solve this problem. I'll be back on the road. I didn't have to modify anything. I was going to kind of modify to try and maybe upgrade. But you know, I've been through this before. I've been doing this for a long time. And I can already see with that company, I'll get a second drive shaft and it's wrong. And a third drive shaft and it's wrong. Luckily, this isn't a customer. I'm the customer. But can you imagine that's your car sitting here without the drive shaft in it for a month and a half, getting wrong drive shafts? This is kind of the pitfall of the older cars. People have found solutions to try to fix common issues with these older cars. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt. Got some more to show you though. And before we move over, my hands are all dirty from touching my shaft, Mrs. Wizard.
Oh, that sounds like a personal problem.
Yeah, I guess it is. But anyways, just like on a Lamborghini Diablo, the later style ones, when your headlights go out, you don't go to Lamborghini to get a new one. If they get cracked, you buy one of these. They are Nissan 300ZX facelift headlights. So, let's move on to the next car. I better clean my hands before I touch this beautiful Bentley Mulsanne. Ugh. If you see over there, sometimes problems comes in 2s and 3s. I'm currently working on my V10 TDI Touareg, which I thought there probably aren't any in the state of Kansas other than mine, and then another one shows up. Cool. Hopefully there's nothing seriously wrong with the engine. This is a 2014 Bentley Mulsanne. It just has a check engine light, nothing serious. But I wanted to show you something that we have parts here to fix. It fixed the Continentals and these as well. How many times that someone you let borrow your car, or maybe you just forget that you open, by pushing the B on this one, your trunk, then you get what you need out of there, your groceries or your golf clubs or whatever, and then the next thing you do is, wham, you close the trunk. Bad idea on these. It's happened so many times. I fixed a lot of stripped out gears. You do not slam shut these powered trunks. You'll break them. Guaranteed you will break them. This is how you're supposed to close them. Like that. I'll open it again. When the gears get stripped, then you have a problem where you go to open the trunk and it hits the stripped part of the teeth, and then it'll actually fall on you. It can be dangerous. Right in here, there's a little motor that opens and closes it. I'll show you the motor. This is the motor that opens and closes the entire trunk. And it has little teeth right here, and a little shaft goes in right there. There's nothing wrong with the motor, but inside of the case is a big plastic gear and a little plastic gear. When those go bad, Bentley will say, oh, that's too bad, the gears are stripped out. You get to buy a whole other motor for $1,600. So, well, can't you just buy the gears? No. You buy the whole motor or go away. I had enough of these break. I reached out to a company, Additive Restoration is the name of the company. They worked together with me to make gear kits to rebuild these. I'll show you the pieces here. Additive Restoration, which you can see their logo here on the gear. They made a bunch of these for me, and you can go through them as well and order them, or we can sell them to you here. But if you have a Bentley Continental or Mulsanne or whatever that has broken trunk gears, we can now just replace the gears, and for $500 instead of $1,600, we can get you back in the game again. These can't easily, I mean, say, well, anybody can 3D print those. No. Do you know the exact dimensions? Do you know exactly how many teeth? Do you know the dimensions of these splines? Do you know all the dimensions to this? It has to be very precise. You have to take all of the measurements very accurately and then put this into a CAD program. Then you can 3D print them. I sent them the old gear so they could take all their measurements and get their system all together and everything. This isn't just as simple as 3D printing. They actually have upgrades on this that you can't do with a 3D printer. You see this here? This is a very hard metal that was specially made and then put onto this plastic piece here. This actually goes into a part in the motor, and it keeps this from stripping. It's way stronger than anything that you can 3D print. So that's the solution to this problem. It cuts the price by 2/3 and gets you back in business. Modification to keep these older cars on the road. Eventually, as we all know, you will not be able to buy this anymore. You'll have to find good used ones and cross your fingers. They're eventually going to stop making these, probably 10 years from now. This will be a solution that has been found that will last for a long time and keep people going. So I definitely want to do a video to show you guys several cars in the shop that were able to help keep on the road and find solutions that you won't find at a parts house or a parts supplier. They have to be modified to make things work. Not every part in the world can be modified, only certain ones can, and you really have to do it on a case-by-case basis. Can there be a solution found? You really have to do the research on that particular case. But it's getting to be that way more and more and more. Even Crazy D in the office, who buys and sells old farm equipment and tractors, said even in the last couple of years, a lot of the carburetor kits and a lot of things that he used to freely be able to order are gone. So hopefully moving forward we can continue to find solutions, but it takes more time. So if a person has to research and actually come up with a solution out of thin air, you don't pay them a half an hour for that. You're going to pay a few hours of time to figure that out because you have no other options. Or that, or don't fix it. or have a very expensive paperweight sitting in your garage because you don't want to pay to fix it. Keep that in mind, guys. You're looking at older cars or unique cars, really strange cars that they didn't make very many of. It's going to be an uphill battle to keep the thing running, especially in 2025, and the problem's probably only going to get worse. Just like I fell for it, I saw that beautiful 91 300ZX. I had to have it. And Eurasian Bob did a trade with the Citroen. By the way, if you don't already know, the Citroen DS is gone. We'd worked a trade with Eurasian Bob. But even with that, having issues getting parts, which I'm not complaining, I'm just showing you guys you need to be ready for it. If you're curious what kind of tools we use to dive into this headache or any other cars in the shop, check our Amazon affiliates link in the description below. If you purchase anything there, we get a small cut and really appreciate it. Make sure to hit the subscribe button because we have tons more videos to come. Thanks for watching.